Thanks for checking out this horror debate series video. Real quick, if you don't know how this works, watch this video to get my pick for the most emotional horror movie. Then you can go to Your Friendly Neighborhood Uncle Pete's channel, which is linked in my description, and watch his video of the same name. He will have a different pick. Then you can come back to my channel if you want to go to the community tab and vote on who you think had the best pick or argued it the best, or however you want to do that. There's also a tie option because people had asked for that. Also, real quick, I usually do this at the end of the videos. I'm going to do it right now. Subscribe to both our channels if you haven't already. That really does help us out a lot. It's great encouragement for all this free content we put out there. Also, hit the thumbs up on this video and any video that we end up putting out, because that helps us with the YouTube algorithm, gains popularity, yada yada. And you can hit the notification bell buttons on our channels to know when we're putting up new videos. So anyway, let's get into my pick for the most emotional horror movie. My pick has got to be Ari Aster's masterpiece, Midsommar. This film oozes emotion in so many different ways. I mean, I'll get into it more in a little bit because I'm going to go through my bullet points, but this film at its core is about emotion. That is the whole purpose of the story itself. So let me go ahead and get into my bullet points. First thing that a lot of people say about this film, other than the fact that it is a phenomenal film, is that Florence Pugh's performance sells every stage of emotion that she has to go through within this film. She plays the main character, Danny, and her performance is undeniably amazing. This was the film that really, really put her on the map because her acting chops are so good, and it is such an emotional character because, like I said, the whole story is about emotion and driven by emotion, and she nails it so much that it can't be denied. It truly can't be denied. And one of the scenes that a lot of people tend to talk about when they talk about her performance and the emotion within the film is that scene where she's yelling with all the women in the cult, and she's just going through like a release, and then they all start yelling with her. It's a weird moment, but it's a powerful moment, and you just feel the release in that moment, and it's a mixture of emotions because of how she carries it out, how she pulls it off, but also how the other actresses end up pulling it off along with her, of just feeling that mixture of like sadness and anger at the same time, and like being scared, and just like it's such a blender of emotions, and you just feel it and you see it in that film. So Florence Pugh's performance really, I don't think you get to the point for me of being the most emotional horror story if she doesn't nail that role the way she did. My next bullet point, the early scene of the main character's sister and parents dead sets a very raw and emotional tone for the film. It's also highly disturbing. So this was very smart on the part of Ari Aster because it's a traumatic thing that happens to the character Danny, but it's also a traumatic thing to just see as a viewer of the film. The way it's shot, the way they staged it with the makeup effects and everything, it's disturbing. It is messed up. And that's an emotion that gets to the core of your audience, just like it gets to the core of the character Danny. So it's a wonderful way to just set up the perfect scene in order for the audience to immediately identify themselves with Danny and want to go on this journey with Danny and empathize with Danny throughout the entire film, which is extremely important because, like I said, this is a film all about emotion, and it's all about the emotional journey that Danny goes through, and the start of that emotional journey obviously has to do with this murder-suicide that her sister ended up carrying out. But that image of that particular scene does not leave people. It is very enduring, and it is messed up. Like, I'm literally talking about it right now, and the last time I saw this movie was literally years ago. I can see it in my mind like I just saw it yesterday, basically. It's very vivid. So yeah, that scene in particular. My next point, when the main character is screaming and crying with the women in, I'm sorry, autocorrect. It said rheumatoid arthritis cult. I don't know what was going for there, but when she was crying with the women, screaming and crying with the women in the cult joining her, the raw emotion, it's raw emotion that you can't turn away from. You feel the main character's release in that moment. That's just another aspect of what I was talking about. I was talking about how it comes through, but also because you're so invested in Danny's story and because you feel so you're empathizing with Danny so much throughout the entire film. Like, that moment feels like a release to you as well, because you are rooting for this character. You feel like you're experiencing this character's, journey, because it is from her perspective, basically. So that scene in this other way is extremely important to give the release feel, which is part of one of the stages that they try to go through emotionally within the film. The film is literally a metaphor for one of the most emotional life experiences. Now, the first time I saw it, I was very excited that I was able to guess what this film was a metaphor for, because I then later, I don't know, like a year or so later, saw an interview with Ari Aster, and he had verified what this script was about. This is about going through the stages of grief. This is about being in a bad relationship and going through every single stage of that bad relationship, starting with how it's starting to crumble. And you see that in the very beginning when that terrible situation, or that terrible event, happens to Danny. She's with her boyfriend, and he kind of just like brings her along on this journey that ends up being very wild for her, obviously. But he ends up bringing her along just because he can't stand to break up with her because of what she just went through. And that's the setup for, you already know that they're in this kind of loveless relationship that's already on the outs. And you're like, how is this going to go? And from there, it's all of those stages that happen of being in this loveless relationship that is deteriorating. And then you're going through all these emotions. And speaking of which, I put down for my last bullet point all the stages that it ends up hitting, because it's grief, basically. And that's where two things are marrying up very well, because there's the grief that Danny's going through in the beginning because of the loss that she has with her family being gone, and also how disturbing that was. And then also this relationship that she's in that's obviously dying as well. So all the stages of grief that this film hits: denial in the beginning, hits anger, it hits the bargaining phase. The bargaining phase is basically where you're kind of like verifying to yourself, like, oh, if I stay with this relationship, like, then I'm still getting this out of it. It's like one of those types of things where you're bargaining with yourself and you're saying, I could go, but I don't get this. It's transactionary in a way. Then depression, and then finally acceptance, which you obviously very much see in the end of this film, in that final situation where, she's in that very beautiful flower dress, but not looking so happy either, because she has resigned herself to this new life that doesn't seem like a good time. I think everyone would agree with that one. But yeah, so denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. All those stages are clearly defined within the film, and you feel that from Florence Pugh's performance. You feel that from the writing. You feel that from the score of the film. You feel that from even the way that Ari Aster has shot the film. It is a masterpiece. It is so emotional. This film, I would argue, is the personification of emotion in a film. Well, many emotions. So for that reason, Midsommar is in my opinion, perfect pick for the most emotional horror film. So anyway, thanks everyone for checking this out. Again, subscribe, thumbs up, all that jazz. Comments too. We love hearing from everyone on what your individual pick would end up being, and also if you agree with us or disagree with us, respectfully. But anyway, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for participating in this series. And until next time, keep it brutal.